The night my father threw me out of his house, I was already pregnant, and somehow, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the way he didn't yell. No shouting, no drama, just silence so heavy it felt like it was pressing on my chest. He stood there in his tailored suit, the same one he wore to board meetings, and looked at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong mansion. "You embarrassed this family," he said calmly. "Pack what you can carry." That was it. No questions, no tears, no concern that his only daughter was shaking, nauseous, and barely holding herself upright. I grew up rich, old money rich, the kind of house with too many rooms and not enough warmth, private schools, summer homes, people who smiled at us because of our last name. I thought that meant I was protected. Turns out, I was only valuable as long as I behaved. The man I loved didn't fit into my father's world. He wasn't poor, exactly, but he wasn't powerful. He had dreams, big talk, and that dangerous kind of confidence that makes you feel seen when you're young and lonely. He told me I was different from my family, that I deserved freedom. I believed him. When I told him I was pregnant, his face changed in a way I still see in my nightmares. Like someone had flipped a switch. He said it couldn't be his. Said the timing didn't make sense. Said I was trying to trap him. Said a baby would ruin his future. And then he disappeared. By the time my father found out, the story had already been rewritten without me. In his version, I was reckless, unstable, a liability, a scandal waiting to explode. So he erased me. That night, I packed a single suitcase. No credit cards, no access to my accounts. My phone was shut off before I made it to the front gate. I remember standing on the driveway, barefoot, holding my stomach like I could protect the life inside me just by touching it. No one followed me. I slept on a bus bench that night. Not because I had to, but because I was too numb to think straight. I kept staring at the city lights, wondering how a girl who once had everything could lose it all before midnight. The next morning, I left town. New city, new last name, no safety net. I rented a tiny apartment that smelled like old paint and desperation. I worked jobs I'd never imagined touching, waitressing, filing paperwork, cleaning offices after hours. I threw up in bathroom sinks and cried in stairwells, then wiped my face and kept going. Because I didn't have a choice anymore. When my daughter was born, I held her and made a promise I didn't know how I'd keep. She would never feel unwanted. She would never be a secret. And no one, no man, no family, no amount of money would ever decide her worth. I named her quietly. No announcements, no photos. Just the two of us, learning how to breathe together. What I didn't know then, what no one could have guessed, was that the same world that threw me away was slowly teaching me how to destroy it. And one day, it would walk straight into my office, asking for my help. People love to talk about starting over like it's some cute, inspirational slogan you slap on a coffee mug. Let me tell you the truth. Starting over feels like drowning quietly because you don't want anyone to notice you're struggling. I raised my daughter the same way I rebuilt my life, piece by piece on no sleep, and with a level of focus that scared people. During the day, I worked whatever job paid cash fast. At night, after I fed her and rocked her to sleep, I opened textbooks at the kitchen table and studied like my life depended on it. Because it did. I enrolled in college under a name no one recognized. No legacy, no connections. Just a social security number and a lot of grit. I chose law because law had teeth. Because law didn't care who your father was, only what you could prove. Money was tight. Every dollar had a job. Diapers, rent, tuition. I learned how to stretch groceries, how to fix things myself, how to smile through exhaustion. My daughter never knew how close we were to falling apart, and that was the point. Her father never called. Not once. No birthday cards. No, how's the baby? Nothing. It was like he'd wiped me from his memory the same way my father had wiped me from the family photos. At first, that hurt. Then it hardened into something else. By the time my daughter started school, I was already top of my class. Professors noticed. Not because I talked the most, but because I never missed details. I read contracts the way some people read faces. I remembered dates, patterns, contradictions. I wasn't emotional. I was precise, and precision wins cases. There were nights I'd sit on the floor of our apartment, my back against the couch, listening to my daughter breathe in her sleep, wondering if all this effort would ever pay off, wondering if I was selfish for chasing ambition instead of comfort. Then I'd remember the driveway, the silence, the way my father's eyes went cold, and I'd open my laptop again. Law school nearly broke me. Finals week with a sick kid. Mock trials after double shifts. People whispered that I was intense, that I didn't socialize, that I was too focused. Good. I wasn't there to make friends. I graduated near the top, passed the bar on my first try, got recruited by a firm known for one thing, going after powerful people who thought they were untouchable, corporate fraud, financial abuse, white-collar crimes wrapped in expensive suits. It felt like fate. As my career took off, I made one rule for myself. My past stayed buried. No interviews, no personal stories. I was just another lawyer with a clean record and a scary win rate. Years passed. My daughter grew into a smart, confident young woman. She never asked about her father. I never lied, but I never volunteered either. Some truths need timing. Then one afternoon, my assistant buzzed me. "Hey," she said, hesitating. "There's a woman here asking for you specifically, says it's personal." I stepped into the conference room and froze. The name on the file in front of me made my stomach drop, because the man she wanted to sue was the same man who once said my baby wasn't his. And this time, I wasn't the girl begging to be believed. I didn't react, not on the outside. Years in professional rooms teach you how to keep your face steady, even when your mind is racing. I shook her hand, invited her to sit, and treated her like any other client who'd walked through my door. But the name on the file? I recognized it instantly. Samey spelling, same middle initial, same me man. The woman sitting across from me was younger than I was. Polite, nervous, carefully put together, like someone trying very hard to appear fine. Her hands kept moving, twisting her wedding ring again and again. "He says I'm imagining things," she said quietly. "That I'm overthinking everything." I nodded. I'd heard that sentence more times than I could count. She talked about finances she couldn't access, decisions made without her, conversations that left her doubting her own memory, public smiles that didn't match private behavior. Some people don't raise their voices. They rewrite the room. As she spoke, details began lining up. The charm, the confusion, the way reality always seemed to tilt in his favor. Same man, same pattern. She slid papers across the desk, statements, emails, agreements. I reviewed them once, then again, more carefully. Nothing had changed. If anything, he'd learned how to stay quieter. When she finished, she looked at me the way people do when they expect to be dismissed, like the answer had already been decided. "I believe you," I said. Her shoulders lowered immediately, relief mixed with uncertainty. I took the case, not emotionally, strategically, because I understood how people like him operate and where they tend to overlook details. Over the next few weeks, I worked quietly. I requested records most people ignore, traced movements others assume are invisible, matched timelines with patience and precision. Patterns always surface. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't just poor behavior. It was documented misdirection, financial inconsistencies, carefully hidden gaps. And then I saw something familiar. An old record, partially sealed, filed years ago, never fully resolved. The name attached to it was mine. I stayed late that night, staring at the screen. For the first time in a long while, I let the weight of it settle. He believed the past was closed. He believed the person he left behind had vanished. He had no idea who was reviewing his history now. At home, my daughter noticed my silence. "You okay, Mom?" she asked. I smiled and said, "Just a long day." It wasn't the moment yet, because once I took the next step, everything would move forward whether he was ready or not. What I was about to uncover wouldn't just clarify the present, it would bring the past into the open. And when that truth reached the courtroom, nothing would stay the same. There's a moment in every case when you realize the truth isn't just ugly, it's explosive. For me, that moment came at 2:17 a.m., alone in my office, staring at a DNA lab report I hadn't planned on ordering. At first, this case was about financial abuse, control, fraud, paper trails. That was enough to bury him legally. But the deeper I went, the more one question kept circling my mind like a warning siren. How many lives did he walk away from? I pulled archived hospital records from a city he hadn't lived in for years. Old clinics, outdated databases, the kind no one checks because they assume the past stays buried. That's where I found it. A birth record. My daughter's birth record, filed under my old last name. And next to it a blank space where the father's name should have been, except someone had tried to erase it. Tried. The system still remembered what people didn't want it to. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony almost knocked the air out of me. He hadn't just denied my child. He'd taken steps to disappear her legally. That's not fear. That's guilt. I moved fast after that. Too fast for him to notice. I requested a court-ordered DNA comparison under the umbrella of asset inheritance disputes. He signed without reading it closely. Arrogance will do that to a man who's never faced real consequences. While we waited on results, I tightened the financial noose. Hidden accounts surfaced. Offshore transfers. Shell companies linked back to him through dummy directors who folded the second subpoenas landed on their desks. His clean empire started to look like a house built on receipts and lies. Meanwhile, his wife, the woman sitting across from me in court prep, had no idea how deep this was going to go. She thought this was about money. She didn't know she was standing next to a truth bomb. At home, my daughter was applying to colleges. Talking about law school, just like you, she joked once. I smiled, but my chest hurt. I still hadn't told her. How do you explain to your child that the man who abandoned her was about to be exposed by the mother he tried to erase? The DNA results came back on a Thursday. 99.98%. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I printed the report, slid it into a sealed folder, and locked it in my desk. Because timing matters. Court started the following Monday. He walked in confident, expensive suit, relaxed posture. Smiling at the judge like this was just another inconvenience he'd charm his way through. He didn't recognize me. That part still gets me. I watched him testify, watched him deny, watched him say under oath that he'd always been honest and never abandoned his responsibilities. Every word dug his grave deeper. When it was my turn to cross-examine, the courtroom went quiet. I asked simple questions: dates, transactions, names. Then I pivoted. "Have you ever denied paternity of a child?" I asked casually. He hesitated, just long enough. "No," he said. That was the moment. Because the next piece of evidence wasn't about money anymore. And once I placed it on the table, he would finally understand who was standing in front of him. The air in the courtroom changed the second I placed the folder on the table. Not loudly, not dramatically, just cold. Powerful men feel it when control slips out of their hands. They don't always know why, just that something's wrong. He straightened in his chair, adjusted his tie, and looked at me for the first time like I wasn't just another attorney. "Mr. Reynolds," I said evenly, "earlier you testified that you have never denied responsibility for a child. Is that correct?" "Yes," he said, confident again. "That is correct." I nodded, like I believed him. Then I opened the folder. "Exhibit 47, I continued. "A court-authorized DNA test, ordered under inheritance and asset verification statutes, Signed by you without objection. His attorney stiffened. Just slightly. Enough. I handed the report to the clerk. The judge leaned forward. The jury shifted. I didn't look at him when I spoke next. I didn't need to. The results show a 99.98% probability that you are the biological father of a child born 19 years ago. The room went silent. No gasps. No whispers. Just stunned quiet. He laughed. Actually laughed. A short, sharp sound. This is ridiculous. I've never— Under oath, I cut in calmly. You denied ever abandoning a child, but records show you refused paternity acknowledgement, blocked child support filings, and took steps to legally erase that child's existence. His face drained of color. This DNA test, I added, confirms what you denied for nearly 2 decades. He looked at the judge, then at his lawyer, then finally, at me. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Not fully, not yet, but something about my voice, my posture, the way I didn't flinch, something rattled him. Do you recognize this birth certificate? I asked, sliding another document forward. It was filed under a different last name. The mother was 22, disowned, pregnant, forced to leave the city. His hands shook now. Just barely. I let the silence stretch. Because truth doesn't need volume. It needs space. The judge cleared his throat. Mr. Reynolds, you will answer the question. Yes, he muttered. I recognize it. The jury watched him crumble in real time. And then came the part he never expected. Your Honor, I said. In addition to the financial crimes already established, we submit that Mr. Reynolds committed intentional fraud, coercive control, and perjury. We are requesting maximum penalties. The verdict didn't take long. Guilty, on all counts. $10,000 in fines. 2 years in state prison. Permanent financial oversight. When the gavel came down, he slumped back in his chair like the weight of everything he'd buried had finally landed. As officers approached him, he looked at me again, really looked this time. Who are you? He whispered. I met his eyes. Calm. Controlled. But I didn't answer. Because the final truth, the one that would destroy what little pride he had left, wasn't for him. It was for the last person I needed to tell. And that conversation would hurt more than any sentence a judge could give. I didn't stay to watch him get escorted out. That part wasn't for me. Revenge looks loud in movies, but real closure is quiet. It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for 20 years and realizing you don't need to look back. I went home early that day. My daughter was at the kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by college brochures. She looked up and smiled, the same smile she's had since she was little. The one that always made the world feel manageable. You're home early, she said. Everything okay? I sat across from her and, for the first time in my life, I didn't prepare a defense. I need to tell you something, I said. She closed her laptop immediately, gave me her full attention. She always did. I told her the truth, not dramatically, not angrily, just honestly, about the man I loved once, about the pregnancy, about being disowned, about leaving town with nothing but a suitcase and a promise, and finally, about the case. She listened without interrupting. No shock, no tears, just quiet processing. When I finished, she leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. So, she said slowly, the guy you sent to prison today? Yes, I said. He's your biological father. She nodded once. Then she surprised me. Okay, she said. That was it. No breakdown, no rage, no questions about him. Just acceptance so clean it almost knocked the air out of me. I already have a dad, she added gently. And that's you. You showed up. Every day. I didn't cry in the courtroom, but I cried then. Years later, people still ask me why I never told him who I was. Why I didn't lean in close and let the truth finish him off. Here's the thing they don't understand. Men like him live off reflection, off knowing they mattered enough to leave damage behind. I didn't give him that. The law remembered him. The record remembered him. The sentence remembered him. But I didn't. As for my father, we never reconciled. He tried once, sent a message through a mutual contact, said he'd heard about my success, said he was proud. I never responded. Pride that arrives late isn't pride. It's regret looking for forgiveness. I didn't need it. I had already built a life where my worth wasn't decided by men who failed me. Now, in my old age, people see a retired attorney, a quiet woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. They don't see the girl on the bus bench, or the pregnant daughter shut out of a mansion. And that's okay, because my story was never about proving who hurt me wrong. It was about proving to myself and my child that abandonment doesn't get the last word. Love does. Work does. Truth does. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is win without ever saying your name.